In 2008, the world of Formula One was abuzz with excitement as a new race made its debut on the F1 calendar, the Singapore Grand Prix. This iconic event was unlike any other in the sport, taking place on a stunning street circuit that wound its way through the heart of the city. And there was one thing that set it apart from all the other races on the calendar. It was the first ever night race in Formula One history. But unfortunately, this historical event made headlines for all the wrong reasons. This venue was where the popularly known Crashgate scandal happened, and this scandal is one of the biggest controversies to ever hit Formula One. In the highly competitive world of Formula One racing, every team strives to achieve a podium finish. The Renault F1 team was no exception, but they'd been struggling for almost 2 years without a single race win. This had caused speculation that the team might withdraw from the sport. However, the management was determined to turn things around. They devised a strategy that involved rehiring a talented driver, Fernando Alonso, who had left the team earlier, and recruiting a promising young driver. After a bitter departure from McLaren in 2008, Alonso was lured back to the team that gave him his first taste of glory. With Alonso's experience and expertise, the Renault F1 team were hoping to turn their fortunes around. Alongside him was Nelson Piquet Jr., the son of the legendary three-time world champion Nelson Piquet. As the 2008 season went on, the situation for the Renault F1 team wasn't looking good despite their efforts. Pat Symonds, the executive head of engineering, was under increasing pressure to deliver results. Symonds, an experienced English engineer who had worked with the Benetton team before, was well aware of the challenges ahead. His job was to lead the effort to transform the team's fortunes and keep Renault competitive in the highly competitive world of Formula One racing. The Singapore Grand Prix was the 15th race of the season, and it was a thrilling event for the fans. However, the Renault Formula One team's poor run continued. Despite Fernando Alonso's strong performance in practice, the team had a disappointing qualifying session. Adding to their woes, Alonso encountered a mechanical problem during qualifying and was unable to complete his final run. He started the race from the 15th position on the grid, while his teammate Nelson Piquet Jr. started from 16th place. The wait was finally over as the race kicked off. Alonso made an early pit stop for tyres and fuel on lap 12, making him the first driver to do so. He had chosen to carry less fuel than his rivals, hoping to pass them early on. However, this strategy didn't work out, and he ended up falling behind the other drivers. Meanwhile, some of his competitors chose a higher fuel load, hoping to skip one pit stop and gain an advantage. On lap 15, the Renault team suffered a major setback when Piquet crashed into the circuit wall at turn 17. Unfortunately, there was no crane nearby to clear the car, leading to the deployment of the safety car. Earlier that year, the safety car regulations had been revised to block the pit lane until all cars were positioned behind the safety car in a single line. These revised safety car regulations aim to level the playing field and eliminate the advantage of leading cars by ensuring that they would not restart the race ahead of the pack after their pit stops. This meant that even if leading drivers opted to pit, they would rejoin the race at the back of the field, nullifying any advantage they may have had. The pit lane closure created a challenging situation for the drivers. While some drivers were able to stretch their fuel and avoid pitting during the closure, others had to make a pit stop to avoid running out of fuel, resulting in a penalty. This led to a shuffled grid, with Alonso finding himself in a favourable position due to his strategic pit stop before the safety car was deployed. Alonso capitalised on his position and used his skill and experience to navigate the narrow circuit, eventually taking the lead in the final third of the race. Alonso maintained his lead and eventually won the race. Initially, there was no question mark concerning the Piquet Jr. accident. The driver himself called it a simple mistake, and the Renault team hailed Alonso's tactical driving skills. However, some skeptics questioned the incident, but their claims were dismissed as mere speculation by Formula One top figures. Felipe Massa, who had led the race before the safety car incident, finished in 13th place and ultimately lost the 2008 Formula One World Championship to Lewis Hamilton by a single point. Massa reportedly questioned Renault team boss Flavio Briatore about the incident, but FIA president Max Mosley claimed that no action could be taken without evidence. What led to the unveiling of the scandal? After a string of poor performances in the 2009 season, there were concerns about Nelson Piquet Jr.'s future with the Renault Formula One team. His father and manager engaged in discussions with the team principal, Flavio Briatore, to find a solution. The team had previously avoided terminating Piquet's contract because they hadn't fulfilled contractual obligations to provide an equal car at all events, with Fernando Alonso having received some of the latest upgrades. Despite the difficult circumstances, Piquet Jr. remained optimistic and delegated discussions to his father. However, the 2009 Hungarian Grand Prix proved to be a turning point. Piquet Jr. qualified in 12th place but finished in a disappointing 14th place overall, setting the stage for the Singapore scandal that would soon rock the world of racing. It was after this race that the truth about what had happened began to emerge. Nelson Piquet Jr.'s father played a crucial role in bringing the scandal to light. He called FIA President Max Mosley and told him that his son had information about the 2008 Singapore GP. This led to a meeting in Paris where Piquet Jr. testified under oath in front of Alan Donnelly, the steward's chairman, and an outside advisor from the investigative firm Quest. During the meeting, Piquet Jr. provided a detailed account of the events that had taken place in Singapore the year before. He spoke about the pre-race meeting that had taken place in Flavio Briatore's office and the discussion that had taken place about causing an intentional crash. He also talked about how he had followed through with the plan during the race and the role that his team had played in orchestrating the crash. Piquet's confession was a bombshell that sent shockwaves through the sport. He claimed that Briatore and Simmons instructed him to crash his vehicle during lap 13 or 14 of the race. The plan was to bring out the safety car and give their other driver, Fernando Alonso, an advantage. Piquet surprisingly accepted this proposition, purposely crashing his car into a wall while he was racing. The FIA was quick to act, launching a comprehensive investigation into the matter. A number of F1 race stewards from the Belgian Grand Prix and the FIA observer were called together to perform additional investigations. This led to an investigation that revealed shocking details about the involvement of key players in the race. Fernando Alonso, the race winner, was among the first to be questioned about the incident. He maintained that he had no knowledge of any meetings leading up to the race, which left investigators looking for other potential culprits. Pat Simmons, Renault's engineering director, was also called upon to provide his account of the event. Simmons admitted to being present at a meeting with Piquet Jr. and Briatore the morning of the race. While he acknowledged that the possibility of causing an accident was discussed, he didn't elaborate any further. Simmons' reluctance to speak on the accusations made by Piquet Jr. was taken into account by the stewards as evidence that they were likely true. Further questioning of Renault engineers revealed that they were unaware of the crash plan and the reasoning behind Alonso's refueling on lap 12, indicating that they were kept in the dark about the impending catastrophe. On the morning of the 2009 Belgian Grand Prix, Briatore was interviewed by the stewards regarding the events that occurred during the Singapore Grand Prix. During the course of the interview, Flavio Briatore, who was serving as the team principal for Renault at the time, presented a letter that he had written to Piquet Jr.'s father. In the letter, Briatore accused the Brazilian driver of extortion in connection with the crash claims. As the investigation continued, more details emerged about the circumstances leading up to the crash. In an interview, team boss Flavio Briatore revealed that Piquet Jr. had not received a contract offer for the 2009 season at the time of the race, and that the matter was not settled until several months later, with the Brazilian salary being reduced from $1.5 million to $1 million. Briatore also claimed that Piquet Jr. hadn't been instructed to crash deliberately and that the pre-race meeting was not intended to discuss any such strategy. Instead, he said, the meeting was held to encourage Piquet Jr. to focus on the race and put aside his recent contract negotiations. Despite Briatore's claims, the evidence presented during the investigation suggested otherwise. Telemetry data showed that Piquet Jr. had deliberately crashed. The stewards' inquiry and the interviews that they conducted revealed, all in all, a convoluted web of activities and reasons that led up to the scandal that occurred at the Singapore Grand Prix. The evidence that was given points to the fact that there may have been a conversation about the crash. However, the specifics of the plot and the identities of those who were engaged are still up for debate and speculation. As the investigation continued, more evidence came to light, and it became evident that the Piquet Jr. crash was intentional. Telemetry data indicated that Nelson Piquet Jr. had indeed crashed on purpose during the Singapore Grand Prix, and it was all part of a bigger plan. Later that year, Pat Symonds finally came clean about what really happened. He admitted that Piquet's crash was intentional and that there was definitely a case to answer. The FIA hearing that followed resulted in a 2-year ban for Renault and an indefinite suspension for Briatore and a 5-year ban for Symonds from the sport. But the ramifications of the scandal were felt far beyond the bans and suspensions. It was revealed that the outcome of the race would have been entirely different had the incident not occurred. Lewis Hamilton was declared the winner of the race, but if the Formula 1 boss had known about the crash plot at the time, the race would have been called off and Felipe Massa would have won the World Championship. Massa was understandably unhappy about this revelation and began investigating his options. He even considered contesting the result, especially after former F1 CEO Bernie Ecclestone recently revealed that he had uncovered the conspiracy in 2008 but chose not to act on it. The aftermath of the scandal was felt throughout the entire F1 community, with fans and pundits questioning the integrity of the sport. The revelation that former CEO Bernie Ecclestone had known about the plot and chose not to act only added fuel to the fire. Some fans even called for a complete overhaul of the sport's rules and regulations to prevent such incidents from happening again. This scandal really rocked the Formula 1 world and exposed a darker side to the sport. Well, what do you think? Share your opinion in the comments down below regarding this scandal and whether you believe there could still be similar occurrences happening behind the scenes in the world of F1 today.